My name is Nicoll Yahgulanaas. Michael is the given name, Nicoll is the British surname, and Yahgulanaas is a lineage name. And I've merged these names together in part to convey a sense of respect for my ancestry, for what I've inherited in terms of the bicultural nature of who I am, the sort of sense of hybridity. And it's that longing to be more of a bridge between these cultures, which have not gotten along terribly well over the last 150 years. I was born and raised off the coast of British Columbia in an archipelago called Haida, which means coming out of concealment, and we now call it Haida. For a brief period of time, it was called the Queen Charlotte Islands, an archipelago of 144 islands located outside the territorial sea of Canada. So I'm interested in bridging between a European and an Indigenous culture to create something that's relevant to us in a very contemporary way, in a very lived and experiential way, not in a, once upon a time, but I want to be the work to be in the living moment. And that, I think, naturally leads me to do works like the mural, playing with a narrative around the presence and some of the risks associated with the orca populations. It's important to create work that's accessible, immediately accessible. The type of work that I do is quite varied. From operas with the Pacific Opera Victoria and Vancouver Opera Companies to large-scale sculptures. There's one at Vancouver Airport and in various places, the very large metal works, and also a lot of books. But also something that I'm really excited about doing are these murals on kozawashi, on large sheets of Japanese paper. I take all these various techniques and put them into a box that I call Haida manga. And Haida manga is my effort to try and link to the connections that exist between Indigenous peoples, specifically Haida, specifically my family, and Northern Asia, Japan, Korea, and even China. I wanted to do work that respected that relationship where people saw one another as humans. And I didn't want to do Haida comic books because it felt like it was too anchored in the kind of Western approach that I was challenging. And so I've used the word manga. And manga means work without, artwork without borders. And it allows me to explore some of the applications of classic Haida art or idiom into a contemporary vehicle for connection and communication that doesn't require an audience to say, oh, I know that ovoid and I know how these designs work and I can interpret this because I understand the metaphors that are going on in the work. A lot of people don't have the key code to decipher the kind of work that's being done today in a classic way. And I want to create work that people can look at it and immediately connect with it. If we can connect in a more sophisticated way and in a more emotive way, with more honesty across ethnicities, I would hope that would prevent the terrible things that are going on. I hope that being able to cut through these barriers of ethnicity and racial identity and experience something in common with the other allow us to treat one another in a kinder, gentler way. Underlying division, it's almost like a feudal system, has serious impacts on people's lives. We see it also being applied to our relationship to other species. Every species in the ocean, I suppose, has sort of suffered the indignity of our violent relationship, particularly orcas. It's almost like we feel we live in our own little planet and we don't understand that everything is linked to everything else. And it's that absence of feeling connected that I try to play with in Haida manga. The mural is a 1 by 2 meter watercolor painting on kozo washi, which is a Japanese paper that's made out of the bark of the mulberry bush. And the paper was specifically made for this project by the Kuboto family, which is a family in Western Honshu in Japan that have been making paper for generations. The paper is amazing. It will outlast us all. The watercolor pigments used are the highest certified pigments in terms of their light fastness as well. So it was really important to create a piece of work that was going to exist for a long time. At the top left-hand side of the mural, I put the Latin word for Orcas, and on the right-hand top corner of the mural, the Haida name for SKAAnaa, for the Orca. And these two elements also operate a little bit like ears, like small ears, so that when you imagine those as small ears, and then you can see that there's a center line in the middle of the mural, imagine that as a nose, and then you can start imagining that the orca that's on the right-hand upper side, the more iconic classic idiom of an orca on the left-hand side, those become the eyes, so that the whole piece becomes a face. And the idea of putting a face on there is to try and have the observer feel some familiarity with it. I don't want the piece to look too alien. I want them to look at it and feel that they can connect with the piece. So let's just talk about the center line of the mural for a minute. One of the basic ideas behind Haida art is this notion of symmetry, where you have an object where the sides are mirrored images of the other. And when you take an object and mirror it and put it on the other side, you're actually taking two separate entities. They're opposites. And yet when you merge them together, you create a third object, which is the pulling together of that which is, we could say, in conflict or in opposition to one another. When they come together in that sort of sense of symmetry, you can create something that is profoundly balanced and comfortable and safe. Breaking it down into its constituent parts, I needed to talk about the life of orca in the world today. And one of the things that came to mind was the punishing sounds of the ocean today, as we have turned it into an acoustic nightmare for highly intelligent creatures. So we have a great ship roaring by with the propellers slicing into the water, and we have also a figure yelling into an eardrum of an orca. We also have some of the indications of the pollution that is going on, the way that we view the ocean as a dump, and so we just allow our trash to slip into the ocean and disappear out of sight, out of mind. Down below it, we have one of the principal foods of orcas, spring salmon, and this particular spring salmon is skewed with this metal bar. The presence of a highly efficient fleet of ships, not only locally, regionally here, but particularly the high seas. They're out there with the drift nets. And they're not only taking salmon, they're taking sharks, they're birds, anything that's out there is getting caught in these drift nets, these ghost nets, even as some of the nets are lost at sea. They continue to float and just kill creatures. One of the features of this mural is I included an image of an orca, a two-finned orca, which is a crest design that belongs to Yahgulanaas, to my own family. One of our family lineage crests is the two-finned orca, which is likely a pod of orcas. Okay, so center figure here is of a woman, and she is positioned in the blowhole of the orca, her face comes out of the blowhole, and she reaches down into a pool, which is also the eye of the orca. And I wanted to play with the idea of our relationship and direct contact to the world of the orca, and how we do touch the ocean in so many ways, and not simply physical, but in terms of the relationship that we have with the ocean. It's important to recognize that this is a personal relationship, and that even if you're living far away from the ocean, your life is deeply connected to the ocean. The weather is deeply connected to the ocean. This is an ocean planet. This is a blue planet. And I think at our peril, we would think that we are disassociated with the ocean. Above her legs is a reference to what I call the ancient people. And this is a reminder that humans have always had a relationship with orca, whether it be the sort of earlier European version of them as monstrous, because they were powerful. They are powerful. And so I wanted to line up these sort of ancestral voices and faces and remind us that we have lineage relationships, some good and some not so good. The bottom of the centerpiece is the face of the orca, and the eyes are actually orcas, young orcas, swimming in the center of that face. Coming out of the forehead is the sewage pipe. Another element that's in here is a ceremonial attire. We call these button blankets, and this particular button blanket made out of wool and abalone shell buttons, it depicts an orca. And down below the edge of that blanket is a young woman, Morella, from the Algitans lineage of Masset, and Morella, who is also my daughter, I'm a lucky guy, is wearing a headdress made by her aunt, Nicoll Yahgulanaas, and this is a Naheen design woven, and that relationship has really informed how I saw this whole project, and I needed to connect and make sure that that connection both with the orca and my own personal lineage was placed in here. In some ways, it's like a signature piece for me. Now, above this area and off to the side from our center figure is the relationship that orcas have to other creatures in the ocean, be they tasty birds or very yummy sea lions. The real world is out there, and there is a taking of life, a recycling of life, and we do it as well. This whole mural is to have us examine the way our relationship works with this great creature. We cannot afford to be casual or indifferent to the way the ocean will push back against us. The ocean and the creatures in it will hurt us if we continue to do damage to them. And this is what the presence of the octopus with its relationship to a commercial whaling boat is all about. And the disappearance of these sentient creatures will hurt us profoundly. The absence of a functioning ecosystem in the ocean is part of the existential threat that we face as a species. We have some very sobering decisions to make. Fortunately, the evidence is that we can do this. That's the good news, that the science says that we can survive this if we moderate our behavior. And so I'm generally optimistic about the future, but realize that it isn't going to be a casual or indifferent response that makes it an optimistic future for ourselves and our children, and for octopus, and for orcas, and for the ocean. We need to substantially support these living systems because we are entirely dependent upon them.